My ex-husband looked me dead in the eye in the middle of Terminal 3 at O'Hare International Airport and told me I was the best mistake he ever corrected. He didn't lower his voice, he wanted an audience, and at 11:40 on a Tuesday morning, the departures level of Terminal 3 had plenty to offer. Business travelers yanking rolling bags, a family with 3 exhausted kids, a gate agent who was pretending very hard not to hear. He planted his feet and looked down at me with that specific expression I had spent 6 years trying to interpret and 1 year trying to forget. I did not raise my voice, I did not cry. I just looked past his left shoulder at the arrivals board, watched the 11:38 from Denver flip from landed to baggage claim, and I did the math. 90 seconds, give or take. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to stand completely still while someone tried to take you apart in public, hit like. You'll understand why in a few minutes. My name is Lena. I am 36 years old. For the past 11 years, I have worked as a senior fraud examiner in the Special Investigations Unit at one of the largest insurance carriers in the country. My job, the one my ex-husband always called glorified bean counting at dinner parties while smiling at his clients, is to find money that people think they've successfully hidden. Insurance fraud, staged accidents, ghost contractors, shell company disbursements routed through Delaware LLCs with names that sound legitimate and forwarding addresses that don't exist. I spend my days reading financial documents the way other people read novels, looking specifically for the sentence that doesn't belong. Kyle knew this about me when he married me. He simply never believed it applied to him. We met at a rooftop fundraiser in Lincoln Park. He was 39, broad-shouldered, and spoke with the particular ease of a man who had never in his life been the least important person in a room and knew it. He developed commercial real estate across the Midwest, industrial conversions, mixed-use projects, warehouse construction. He wore his success generously. I fell for it. We were married 14 months after that rooftop party, and I spent the next 6 years telling myself that the version of Kyle he showed me on good days was the truest one. We separated 18 months ago, the divorce finalized 11 months after that. 7 weeks ago, I ran into him at O'Hare. I was there to pick up my younger sister Nina. She had been in Denver for a series of consulting meetings, and her flight had just landed. I was standing near the bottom of the escalators with 2 airport coffees, watching the board, when I heard his voice behind me. I turned around. He was standing 10 feet away with my former best friend on his arm. Her name is Sienna. We had been close since junior year of college, 12 years of daily texts, of being each other's emergency contacts, of knowing the specific shape of each other's worst days. She had stood beside me at my wedding. I found out 4 months after Kyle left that they had been sleeping together for at least 2 years before that. The text history I discovered in a shared cloud backup I still had access to made the timeline unambiguous. Sienna was visibly pregnant. 6 months, maybe 7. She wore a white linen blazer that made no attempt to conceal it, and Kyle's hand rested on the small of her back with a proprietary ease that made my stomach clench once, hard, before I regulated it back down to nothing. She had a diamond on her left hand that caught every overhead light in the terminal. Kyle registered my expression and something shifted in his face, not shame, something that looked more like appetite. Well, he said, he let the word just sit there. I turned back toward the escalator. He followed. Sienna kept pace beside him, and the 3 of us ended up in a loose, awful triangle near a row of chrome seats that nobody was using. If you have ever experienced a betrayal of this specific geometry, husband and best friend simultaneously, you already know what the first 5 seconds of a surprise encounter feel like. The body runs its calculations before the mind catches up. I had rehearsed this hypothetical moment 100 times in the first year after the divorce. In my imagination, I always had something perfectly devastating to say. Standing there holding 2 coffees, I felt none of that, just a flat, almost administrative calm. Kyle gave Sienna a brief approving look, an invitation. She stepped forward and tilted her left hand slightly so the diamond moved in the light. "We're actually getting married in Cabo next month," she said with the deliberate brightness of someone who has scripted the moment in advance. Kyle finally found the right person. She laughed, short, performative. "Better late than never, right?" I looked at her, then at Kyle. "Congratulations," I said. That was apparently the wrong answer. He needed something more, tears, raised voices, some confirmation that he still had the ability to damage me. My composure was an insult to him and he recognized it as one. He leaned in slightly, dropping his voice just enough to give the cruelty a false sense of privacy. You chose your career over everything, Lena. Every dinner, every trip, every conversation about starting a family. You had a case file to review, a deposition to prep for. I waited for you to decide you actually wanted a life, and when I realized you never were going to, I found someone who did. He shook his head slowly. Sienna, build something with me. You were just occupying space in my house. I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for. But this, he gestured between himself and Sienna, who placed a hand on her stomach on cue. This is what I was supposed to have, and I'm sorry it took me so long to stop settling. The people in the nearest seats were watching. A woman with a rolling carry-on slowed as she passed. I felt the specific humiliation of being made a public spectacle by someone who knows which words reach the nerve. I checked the arrivals board. Denver, about 60 seconds. And because Kyle's ego has never in his life allowed him to stop when he was ahead, he made his real mistake. He stepped closer, not threatening, just satisfied, and he kept talking. I want you to know something. His voice dropped to just above a whisper. Your attorney thought she was thorough, all those months of discovery requests, all those forensic demands. She never found it. Nobody found it. He smiled. I restructured 3 of my development LLCs 6 months before I filed for divorce. Moved the capital into a receivables account offshore. Grand Cayman. Clean as anything. Your lawyers got half of my declared salary and a retirement account I'd already depleted. I bought a lake house in Lake Geneva and a 2-bedroom in River North with money that, on paper, never existed. He straightened up. You didn't beat me, Lena. You just didn't know the game. I looked at him for a long moment. Behind him, the escalators began moving with purpose. I glanced at the diamond on Sienna's hand, then at my watch. Hold that thought for about 30 seconds, I said. He frowned. He started to say something dismissive, some parting line about how I'd always had a gift for theater, and then he heard footsteps behind him and stopped. Darius came off the escalator first. My brother-in-law is 6'2", former Army JAG, and has been an FBI special agent in the Financial Crimes Unit of the Chicago field office for 9 years. He was in Denver because he had spent the past 3 days in a conference room at the U.S. Attorney's office reviewing financial records in connection with a federal wire fraud investigation. He was moving with the contained efficiency of a man who had been in government conference rooms for 72 hours and wanted exactly 2 things: coffee and an indictment. He wasn't alone. The man walking directly beside him was in his late 50s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His name is Fletcher Haynes. He had spent his career building a reputation in industrial real estate development across the upper Midwest, and had until recently trusted a subcontracting developer named Kyle to manage 3 of his insurance-backed construction projects in Cook County. Fletcher Haynes was not looking at Kyle. He was looking at Sienna, and whatever he saw on her face when she saw him confirmed something he had apparently already known. Kyle turned around when he processed my expression. The moment he recognized Darius, he shifted instantly from satisfied to stiff. He extended his hand, already recalibrating toward corporate warmth. Agent, hey, small world, Kyle Merritt. I think we've met at the Lakeshore Development Forum. Darius did not take his hand. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a legal envelope, double-sealed with a federal court stamp across the flap. He pressed it flat against Kyle's chest with one firm, deliberate motion. The sound it made hitting Kyle's sternum was very clear in the terminal. Kyle Merritt, you are being served with a federal grand jury subpoena in connection with an insurance fraud and wire fraud investigation, Darius said. His voice carried to everyone within 20 feet without effort. I'd recommend you read it carefully before your attorney tells you to shred it. Kyle grabbed the envelope with both hands. He looked at it. He looked at me. I sipped my coffee. And then Fletcher Haynes stepped past Kyle entirely and stopped directly in front of Sienna. The color left her face in one clean sweep, like a light going off. She wasn't confused. She wasn't surprised. She took half a step back, both hands going to her stomach, and looked at him with the expression of someone watching a wall they built very carefully begin to come apart at the seams. That's my child, Fletcher said, quietly, completely without theater. I have a paternity test completed at a certified private lab to confirm it, and a custody filing entered in Cook County Family Court this morning. He handed a document to Darius without looking away from Sienna. I am not going away. Kyle turned to Sienna. The envelope was still in his mouth opened. What is he talking about? Kyle said, too thin, too high, not the voice of a man who buys lake houses. She was crying, not performing it, actually crying, the kind that arrives before you can intercept it. She shook her head. You can't be the father, she said to Kyle, and stopped herself, but it was already out. Kyle stared at her. He had had a vasectomy 4 years into our marriage, 6 months after he told me we would start trying for a family, and 2 years before he told me we were done. He had filed the procedure through his employer health insurance, which was underwritten by the same carrier my special investigations unit serviced. The claim had been flagged in a routine audit 18 months ago, cross-referenced to his legal name and social security number, and had been sitting in a digital file on a secure server I had daily access to. I had never looked at it, there was no reason I would have. Darius had pulled it last week while building the fraud dossier. Kyle had told Sienna they were trying naturally. He had let her believe a child between them was possible. He had let her believe this pregnancy was his, and Sienna, who was not a good person but who had clearly also been deceived, had believed him until Fletcher Haynes existed. Kyle's face went through several expressions in rapid succession, none of them ones I recognized from 6 years of marriage. Then he turned to me. You set this up, he said, the wild-eyed certainty of a man who needs a villain. You brought him here. I came to pick up my sister, I said. A woman nearby had stopped pretending she wasn't listening. And then Ruth arrived. Kyle's mother had apparently walked them to security and come back down to the arrivals level for reasons I never fully understood. She came around the corner from the shuttle bay, took in the scene. Her son holding a federal subpoena, Sienna openly weeping, a federal agent standing 3 feet away, and did exactly what she had always done when things went wrong in the Merritt family. She found someone to blame, and she found her immediately. She crossed the terminal floor with the decisive energy of a woman who has never seriously entertained the possibility of being wrong, and she pointed directly at me. You. Her voice was the controlled pitch of someone who knows she's in public but cannot stop herself. You have been waiting for an opportunity like this since the day he filed, I told him. Women like you cannot tolerate being left, so you spend years building a case out of nothing. Your son is being served with a federal grand jury subpoena, I said. I didn't issue it. She turned on Darius. He showed her his credentials with the patient efficiency of someone who has done this particular thing many times. She turned back to me, and the rage that had been looking for a container found the worst possible one. You know what your problem is, Lena. You thought your insurance job made you the smartest person in every room, and the whole time he was moving millions you never even found. $6 million. Grand Cayman, and you walked away with half a joint checking account and a used SUV. Lost. You will always. Kyle's voice was a ragged whisper. Stop, please stop talking. She didn't register it. And the real estate, every single LLC your people want to dig through, that capital is clean. He structured it years ago. Your attorneys accepted the disclosure. There is nothing left to. Kyle grabbed her arm. Mom, stop talking right now. She looked at him, genuinely surprised by the grip. In the silence that followed, I took one slow breath and let everything assemble itself. 6 million, Grand Cayman, 3 restructured LLCs, and Fletcher Haynes standing 4 feet to my right, who had already entered into a cooperation agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office and had brought 3 years of project payment records with him. I had flagged Kyle's construction company in my own fraud database 8 months ago. A pattern of inflated subcontractor invoices, duplicate claims on 2 Cook County projects, a suspicious fire claim on a warehouse conversion in Joliet that had paid out $1.2 million for damages the site photography did not support. The case had been assigned to a colleague in another regional unit. I had filed the referral and moved on, the way I do with 50 flagged companies a month. I had not known it was Kyle's company until Darius called me from Denver on Saturday night. The 6 million offshore wasn't just hidden marital assets. It was the laundered output of 4 years of systematic insurance fraud, fraudulent claims processed through policies held by Fletcher Haynes's development group, which meant Fletcher's own premiums had effectively funded Kyle's lake house, his River North apartment, and the diamond on Sienna's hand. The money Kyle had bragged about hiding from me was money he had stolen from his most important client. I looked at him for the last time in that terminal. He was staring at his mother with an expression I recognized from Marriage, the look he got when a situation had moved entirely outside his ability to manage it. "You really shouldn't have said any of that out loud," I told Ruth. My voice was the same temperature it always is when I'm working. Flat, even, final. "Your son just described asset concealment in front of a federal agent, and you just corroborated it." I handed Nina her coffee. We walked toward the parking garage. That evening, I sat down at my home desk with 2 monitors, a VPN connection to my firm's SIU database, and 11 years of professional training. I pulled every flagged claim tied to Kyle's 3 development LLCs. I cross-referenced the disbursement timelines against the offshore transfer records Darius had shared with me under a formal consulting agreement. I mapped the flow backward from the Cayman account to a domestic pass-through held under the name of a Delaware LLC called Meridian Properties Consolidated. Registered, I noted, to the same P.O. box address that appeared in 2 of Sienna's property management filings. She had been his domestic pass-through. Her property management license had given her the authority to move capital between accounts on behalf of LLCs she was contracted to service. The transactions looked like standard property management disbursements. They were not. By 11 o'clock, I had a 27-page forensic summary fully sourced. I sent it to Darius with a cover note. "This should shorten your discovery phase considerably." He called me at 11:14. "Lena, I need you to submit this as a formal consulting report tonight." "Already formatted," I said. 48 hours later, I received a call from Mr. Carver, the president of the Illinois Real Estate Development Association. I got directly to the point. The IREDA's annual awards dinner was 4 days out. Kyle's firm was a finalist for Developer of the Year. The association had been briefed by the U.S. Attorney's Office. They needed an independent forensic auditor to review the firm's submitted project documentation before the event, and to be present at the gala itself, given what was likely to happen. My name had been given to him by the FBI field office. The grand ballroom at the Chicago Riverwalk Center was the kind of room that makes commercial real estate developers feel like the most consequential humans alive. 40-foot ceilings, the Chicago River on one side, the whole skyline lit up to the north, 500 people in formal wear, champagne on silver trays. Kyle and Sienna arrived 20 minutes after I did. She looked pale beneath the makeup. He looked like a man who had been telling himself a reassuring story for 72 hours and was beginning to lose faith in it. He scanned the room when they entered, his automatic territorial sweep, and I watched the exact moment he found me standing with Mr. Carver near the presentation stage. He came across the floor quickly, leaving Sienna behind without seeming to notice. "What are you doing here?" he said, not a question. "I'm a guest of the association." "You need to leave." He turned to Mr. Carver. "Sir, this woman is my ex-wife and she has been running a targeted campaign to Mr. Merritt." Mr. Carver's voice was very quiet. "Miss Lena has been retained as an independent forensic consultant to review the documentation your firm submitted for the Developer of the Year nomination. That review is complete. I'd encourage you to find your seat and speak to your attorney before the evening progresses." Kyle stood very still. He was doing calculations. "There is nothing to find," he said carefully. "The report has already been filed with the U.S. Attorney's Office," Mr. Carver said. In the women's lounge off the main hall, 20 minutes before the FBI arrived, I found Sienna in one of the velvet chairs near the mirror. She was past crying, just sitting with her hands in her lap, the diamond still on her finger, looking at the middle distance. I stood in the doorway. "The paternity filing is moving forward," I said. "Fletcher's attorneys entered the emergency custody motion this morning. Your property management license is under review for revocation given your role in the LLC disbursements, and the DA is looking at criminal conspiracy as a separate count from Kyle's charges." I paused. "I didn't build this case for you specifically, but I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry about how it's landing." She looked up at me. Her face was very tired. "I thought he loved me," she said. "I know, so did I." I went back to the ballroom. The FBI came through the main entrance at 9:15. 4 agents, the city skyline behind them through the tall windows, the whole room going quiet in sections like a wave moving from the door toward the stage. Kyle was at the finalist table near the front. He stood slowly when he saw them. I think some part of him genuinely believed until that moment that someone would intervene, that a call would come through, that the machinery would stop. It did not stop. The lead agent read the charges clearly enough for the nearest 40 tables to hear. Wire fraud, insurance fraud, filing false claims with a federally regulated insurer, money laundering. The handcuffs were audible in the silence of the room. They walked him out through the center of the grand ballroom, 500 of his professional peers. The photographers who'd been hired to document award presentations found him automatically, the way cameras always find the thing that doesn't belong. He didn't look at me when he passed. I didn't need him to. The Cook County Family Court hearing was 8 weeks later. Kyle appeared in a transport jumpsuit. He looked like he'd lost 20 pounds. Judge Miriam Osei reviewed the forensic report, the criminal indictment, the offshore transfer records, and the original divorce disclosure documents Kyle had signed under oath. She read her ruling into the record in the flat, unhurried voice of someone who has seen this shape of dishonesty before. The original settlement was vacated on grounds of fraud upon the court. The declared project losses were determined to be fraudulent representations made to conceal existing liquid capital. Kyle's legitimate marital assets, verified business equity, retirement accounts, jointly held property, were subject to full equitable division plus punitive damages. The insurance fraud restitution, $4.3 million in fraudulent claims paid out against Fletcher's policies, would go back to the carrier and its reinsurers. The judge stated this distinction explicitly, and I was grateful she did, because it was the right outcome, and I had included it in my report for exactly that reason. Stolen money belongs to the people it was stolen from. What I was owed was what had always been mine. What I walked out of that courtroom with was my legitimate half of a marriage Kyle had spent years quietly dismantling, plus compensation for the year of my life I spent fighting for basic honesty in the original proceedings, plus a consulting fee from the U.S. Attorney's Office for work that shortened their discovery timeline by an estimated 4 months. It was not a number that required a lake house in Lake Geneva to feel real. It was enough. Ruth came to my building lobby once, about 6 weeks after the hearing. She stood there with a scuffed handbag and no Chanel blazer and asked me to help cover Kyle's legal defense costs. She said we had been family once and that should still mean something. I told her it had meant something for a long time. Then I had her escorted out and went back upstairs. Kyle is currently awaiting federal sentencing. His attorney has been negotiating a plea agreement projected to result in 8 to 12 years. Developer of the Year was awarded to someone else. Sienna's property management license was suspended pending the criminal conspiracy case. Fletcher secured interim custody of their son through family court. She is renting a studio apartment in Evanston and working a retail job she started last month. 3 months ago, I left the carrier and opened my own consulting practice in the West Loop. My firm works with insurance carriers, family law attorneys, and forensic accounting teams to review financial disclosures in divorce proceedings where complex business structures, shell companies, or offshore accounts are involved. We find what people hide. We find it every time. And unlike Kyle, I understand the difference between money I'm owed and money that belongs to someone else, which, it turns out, is the difference between building something real and building something that eventually gets walked out of a ballroom in handcuffs. My sister Nina came over last Thursday. We sat on my roof deck with the city lit up across the lake, talking about nothing in particular, and I thought, not for the first time, that this was exactly the life I had been moving toward, not the one Kyle decided I was too career-driven to want, the actual one. He told me I was occupying space in his house. He was right about that part. I was always meant to be somewhere else. The truest thing I know, after 11 years of watching people try to conceal what they've done, is that the real revenge is not the moment they're caught. It is every ordinary morning that follows, when you are still standing and they are not. When you have built something honest from the rubble of what they left behind, and the only record of their existence is a federal case number. That is the kind of untouchable that cannot be restructured offshore. It is the only kind that lasts. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, hit like and subscribe, and leave a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. I read every single one.